YouTube. Today we're going to look at Saturn Rising. This is the edition that came out towards the end of last year, which is Saturn Rising combined with Into the Void. Now, I never actually got my hands on Into the Void. It was, for whatever reason, it always eluded me. So when I saw that they were coming out with a combined Saturn Rising plus Into the Void, I was very excited. Into the Void is one of those smaller grimoires that was often quite pricey, but it never seemed to get on the secondhand marketplace very often. So I do have another video. This is one of the most fascinating parts of the book, by the way. I do have another video on Saturn Rising, which was the first edition. So I really get into more of the Saturn Rising part of it in that book, or in that video. But I mostly wanted to focus on Into the Void. Go back a page here. Suicidal initiation of Mars and Saturn. And that's what the symbol there represents. And you can see some of the stitching in the middle here. As a quick side note, those of you who've been following my channel know that Aeon Sophia Press, generally I'm not a huge fan of their books, but you don't really know those sorts of things until after you get them, which is why I make this channel. But Saturn Rising is, if you're interested in any kind of death or Saturnian work, this is absolutely one of the best books, if not the best book available. Saturn Rising, again, originally came out in 2015, and Into the Void came out in 2016 as an intermediary entry between, apparently, Saturn Rising Volume 2, which comes out this year in 2023, which I wasn't even aware of or had completely forgotten that there was going to be a Volume 2. Again, this one is a little bit, it's even darker than Saturn Rising, because this is dealing with spiritual suicide. And he goes into exactly what that means. Obviously, it's not actual suicide, but it is trying to kill the ego, which is essentially the greatest problem of mankind, since it originates all of our feelings of entitlement and superiority and cruelty. And so getting rid of our individual ego is the first death that we really experience through this working. So it's quite a bit, but it's very easy to read. There's some concepts that might take you a couple of read-throughs of the paragraph, but here it talks about Karanzan, which I'll give you a quick little explanation here in a minute. But another interesting topic within Into the Void is the explanation of the elements and the fifth element. There's a whole little chapter about that. But in Saturnian work, that fifth element, instead of maybe being spirit or higher consciousness, is death, which is an interesting concept that I hadn't thought of before, mainly because I usually just think of it as being spirit. But it certainly makes sense in this work. Also, let me go back to page 372. Again, if you think about the ego, which is our personal self, and then you think about the collective consciousness, and if you want to pause and start reading about right here, look around the room in which you sit, through the end, if you want to pause that and read through it real quick, that's fine. But it kind of gives you the what if. Obviously the world goes on when somebody we know dies. The world physically goes on, even though we feel like we lose a part of ourselves. But it kind of opens up this theory of what if I didn't exist? Would the world be exactly how it was when I entered into a physical realm? Or would things have been drastically different, and the whole group of people and items and collective consciousness that I had originated when I came into being, would they not have met at all and been dispersed into different parts of the world? So that's a thought. I think that made sense, hopefully, but it's one of those things where, again, if we get away from the idea of a single individual ego construct that we make to deal with the world, kind of like how religion tries to explain why we're here, as people, we're given the encouragement when we're younger to start developing individuality, which is good for this realm, but it creates an ego that we need to overcome to really get into the beyond and our sorcerer's self, so to speak. So I did want to give you another. Here's by the way, this is a 2-week ritual. After Saturn Rising and you get into the void, there's a 2-week schedule on the days of the week. You can go through and do it for an extended period, but 2 weeks is the minimum, and the days are laid out for what you should be doing on each one. Now, the goal of Saturn Rising and again into the void, here comes a diagram, is to basically kind of take a shortcut into the Tree of Life. So for those of you who aren't very familiar, again, this is a diagram that I basically drew for the most part and just kind of combined different diagrams. Got the planets and the spheres, as well as your houses there with the tarot cards. Anyway, instead of having to go through and go up the tree up to Binah, which is understanding and also Saturn, because this is the suicidal initiation of Mars to Saturn, or Saturn through Mars, we are basically performing these rituals to jump up from Mars to Saturn. Typically, this is where the veil of the abyss is going to be. So we're crossing over into that other side of the abyss to reach Saturn, which is where we will begin to continue our further workings. You'll notice also it's severity and mercy. So you've got Mercury, Mars, and Saturn are on the severe side. But I just want to give you a visual representation. So overall, Saturn Rising is, again, in my opinion, probably the best collective work for Saturnian Gnosis that's out there. If you're looking for other books in the same current, Occult of the Black Cube is another video that I have on my channel that I would highly recommend, and also Liber Falcifer and that trilogy of books. But that one is a little different author, different feel. But long story short, I would definitely get this. It makes it so much easier and so much more affordable to get the two of them together. So let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.